In the city of Kirkuk, I'm having a security detail follow me. 2 real bodyguards. Here is one on my right following me, all in black. Here's another one, you can see his gun sticking out from behind. The reason for all this is that although it's been relatively quiet in Kirkuk for the past few years, and it's considered generally a safe city, the truth is that all these relativelies and generallys remain a pretty iffy affair. Because Kirkuk is right in the middle of the territory where multiple terrorist sleeper cells are known to be, continuously hunted down by Iraq's special services and popular mobilization forces. They keep looking for the insurgency groups trying to continue the war. And so, you never really know what might happen to you here. That's right, my friends, only a few months separate me talking about the iffy status quo and a new wave of bloodshed here. This is Kirkuk, a city in northern Iraq. In 2021, I reported from here about what was going on in the villages close to the line of contact with the Islamic State terrorist forces. This is the territory that isn't fully yet under the government control, which means that people literally sleep with guns in their hands every night. But even that didn't help them last winter. The terrorists attacked and burned down an entire village. Some locals managed to record video on their phone. This happened south of Kirkuk, where terrorists put to fire 16 houses and claimed the territory. I should say that the city of Kirkuk in northern Iraq is a home to some of the strongest people I've ever seen. For many years, they've been standing as a united front against the attacks of the terrorists.
3 years ago, there was an ISIS member enter here in this building. There was like very strong fight between the forces in the street, and some people was having weapon with them also. Like they was fighting, and everyone's shooting around this building. Till the last moment when he saw suicide, he bombing himself, as the last man standing, we'll see.
In this program, I will show you how people live in Kirkuk, one of Iraq's most troubled cities that was built over a large oil field, a target of protracted and bloody war lasting for many years. This is Lyadov and how people live in Kirkuk. We're leaving Baghdad to go north, to the parts of the country that have always been the most troubled in Iraq. It is true that even today, they have real terrorist sleeper cells that often aren't even sleeping, so to say. This area has mountains that provide cover for the terrorist cells. Mountain warfare is particularly challenging since rough terrain slows the troops while providing perfect cover for illegal armed groups. Fighting an enemy that is hiding in the mountains is the ultimate challenge, which is why terrorists prefer to stay in the mountains and attack from there. A few years ago, this road was extremely unsafe to travel because terrorists used to attack travelers. Fellow Iraqis, I mean. There were no foreigners at the time here at all. Foreigners would have been in ultimate danger if they were to show up here. Some demanded payoff for passage, but mostly it wasn't about money. They checked people's IDs, and if they had any, even a remote connection to the government, that's where their life ended, right there and then, where they'd been stopped on the road. In order to understand what's special about Kirkuk, you need to know 2 things about it. Firstly, it's home to one of the world's largest oil and gas deposits. And secondly, it's located in the area contested by the Iraqi government and the region that has been trying to claim autonomy from Iraq for many years and become an independent state of Iraqi Kurdistan. It has its own government, president, and an army. While the majority of the population in Iraq are Arabs, 90% of Kurdistan's population are Kurds. Kurds are one of the few nations in the world that have no nation state, even though their total population is estimated to exceed 45 million people. Kurds mostly live in Turkey, Iran, Syria, and here in Iraq. And this is where we're going to go now, to Iraqi Kurdistan. To be honest, there is next to no traffic on the roads here. You're lucky to see 1 or 2 cars passing by as you travel. People say that no more than 2 or 3 people at most arrive in Mosul per day, and they prefer to come in the early hours of the morning to avoid heat. The farther we go, the fewer cars we see on the road. No people, no roadside merchants, not even a place to buy a bottle of water. It really feels like we're driving into a war zone. This is really a very troubled area, and the trouble comes not so much from the Islamic State militants who take cover in these mountains and attack from there every now and then, but mostly from the tensions caused by the prolonged Iraqi-Kurdish conflict. Kurdistan is fighting for its independence, while Iraqi Central Authority refuses to grant it, which creates a lot of tension in this area. 5 years ago, Kurds were very close to taking a big step towards the much-desired independence. Kirkuk was to hold a referendum that would decide its status as part of Kurdistan, but then things went south.
The dispute started in decades ago in the early 1900s. Until today, the dispute goes on. So Baghdad claimed its rightful ownership of Kirkuk, same as KRG, same as the Kurdistan Regional Government. They both claim ownership of Kirkuk. The dispute have been happening forever until today. It's ongoing. KRG is still making those claims.
For example, we are now formally in Iraq, but as you can see, there is a Kurdish flag here. Check it out. And in those villages that we passed, we also saw Kurdish flags. So everything here is a huge mix of factors that all play their roles. And as a result, it's next to impossible to know who controls what around here. I've been strongly advised not to step out of the car while we're on the road because the locals do not always react well to foreigners.
What happened in Kirkuk is similar to most of Iraq. Detonation, suicide bombers, assassination, kidnapping. It's been the same as Baghdad, same as Mosul, same as all of the other cities. But no,
same, you mean like
the same ratio of incident, let's say, comparing to the other cities. Like explosion happening in Baghdad, it happened in Kirkuk. Assassination happening in Baghdad, it happened in Kirkuk.
Still happens?
No. In the past 2-3 years, I believe, Kirkuk have been very, very stable. There have not been, at the moment, I don't recall any terrorist attack in the past 3 years.
The region's key asset is the oil pipeline that delivers oil from Kirkuk to a port in Turkey where it's traded internationally. Between April 2003 and December 2004, there had been a total of 123 registered attacks on Iraq's energy infrastructure. Kirkuk's oil business is a lucrative turf, both for the central government of Iraq and the government of Kurdistan, as well as for the terrorists who have been trying really hard to take this area under their control.
So the road from Baghdad to Kirkuk, it's let's say, if we look at the side, it's most of the area that IS captured. So starting from here until Tikrit to Mosul. So this was the last line to this side that IS had. It's 1 kilometer from the street that we're driving now.
No one was doing any night trips from here, like if it's not very, very, very emergency thing.
Can you give an example, like what was the risk based on this road before? So what they were doing, those guys?
Sometimes they was shooting people, sometimes they was killing the driver and take his car, and a lot of things. They put like a fake checkpoint to choose people from army, like they was sometimes checking the ID card and killing these people also in this road. So the main target was everyone, citizen, army, everyone. They don't care.
Have you ever been captured personally?
No. My brother happened with him in this road. So there was like a fake checkpoint, like near to Amerli, and there was asking about the people. And the good thing, my brother was having university ID card.
Back at that time, Mohammed did a lot of volunteer work, while terrorists considered all the people who helped the opposite side their enemies.
When they show his ID card, like he's a university student, they told him like, you should leave, like we don't have any business with you. But there was other people, my brother saw them they killed, like in the same car.
The same car with him?
Yeah, in the same car with him.
They were with government?
I think so, yes.
How long did he spend on that checkpoint, does he know?
I think he told me around 2 hours, but was very afraid, like when he back home, like it was very hard moment, like, you know, when you feel all your life on risk, like you don't know what's your destiny.
In summer 2014, the Islamic State advanced into Iraq, capturing its second largest city, Mosul, and became the world's biggest terror organization. The Islamic State sought not only to take control of the cities, but also to secure sustainable financing for itself. Kirkuk, with its oil riches, was like a pot of gold for them. That's what typically happens on the road here. Every hour or half an hour you hit a checkpoint, and the local accompanying you goes to have a chat with the staff. People here don't give the slightest damn whether you have a visa, or maybe you haven't, or maybe you're the president of some country. They don't give a crap. Unless you have a local who comes to pick you up and claims his responsibility for you, you're not going anywhere. Right now, we're waiting for our local contact person who is supposed to arrive and help us get through. You can see in the mirror that these checkpoint guys are not happy to see just the two local guys accompanying me, Ozan and Mo, like it's not enough. We're waiting for someone else. This spot feels the opposite of reassuring. They have huge concrete walls put up for protection and no filming is allowed here. I said I'd go to the loo to take a better look at the checkpoint. This is a typical checkpoint in Iraq provinces. They have these huge tall walls along the road to protect them from the blasts. There are a few more checkpoints down the road and we're still waiting for our guy. He finally arrives and we're good to go. In a few moments, we're entering the city. This used to be a hotel in Kirkuk, and you can see how much it's been ruined, practically to the core. No windows, all walls are covered with bullet marks, including here on the ground floor. Right here, these marks were left by a more powerful weapon, a machine gun. And these marks were left by a smaller weapon, like an assault rifle. This was a machine gun again. The walls are covered with bullet marks, and it just gives me the creeps just to be watching this, because I can only imagine how fierce the fighting was around this building.
3 years ago, there was my ISIS member enter here in this building. They was preparing for this operation for a long time, because inside, like, there was a lot of like weapons. They start shooting people. They start shooting people here in the street, like from there, like from the windows. And there was like RPG snipers like inside. So I think there was around 6 or 7 members inside this building. And what you see, like, there was like very strong like fight between the forces in the street, and some people was having weapon with them also. Like they was fighting, and everyone's shooting like around this building.
Can you imagine? The entire city's population stood united against the attackers. It was here that I showed you in my previous reports a gun store with a charismatic owner. Here, for example, they have a selection of shotguns. This one is Turkish-made, and then there are others. To be honest, I'm stunned. I've never seen so many firearms in one place before in my life. So you understand now that pretty much everyone here owns a gun, and all the people took it upon themselves to fight the terrorists. Then there were aerial attacks on the city in order to force the terrorists out of their hiding places into the basements of buildings. It's time to check in the hotel. Check out the security measures. They've got a metal detector gate. Okay, that's pretty standard. And here there's a fully equipped security guard with a Kalashnikov in his hand and lots of ammo. He's got pouches on his back and 2 extra sets of rounds on his chest. Here's one of the guys assigned to accompany my crew. He's got a gun stack in the back of his jeans covered with a t-shirt. The locals here are mostly friendly. I'm not kidding. It's even astonishing how friendly they are. In one cafe, a local who found out that I'd come from far away to see Kirkuk was so impressed he ran out to follow me and give me his ring. I tried to say no as politely as I could, but he insisted I take his gift. Even though Kirkuk does seem very friendly to me, and the people are very nice and react to the camera pretty well, it's still a fact that foreigners very rarely come to Kirkuk, or rather, they almost never do. To the point that sometimes, when we got checked at checkpoints and I showed my visa, people didn't really understand what a visa is because they'd never seen it before. Foreign visitors is something that doesn't really happen here. Getting to Iraqi Kurdistan today is fairly easy. Its capital city, Erbil, is just an hour's ride from Kirkuk. Erbil is a really safe place. You can safely go out there at night. It's easy to get to from Istanbul, for example. There are direct flights from there, and they're very cheap. In Kirkuk, going out at night is a very bad idea. Foreigners are at a particular risk because they can be kidnapped for ransom. The entire city looks like a fortified war ground. Every now and then, we take 5. The heat in Iraq in the summer is unbearable. 55 degrees Celsius is considered regular temperature, so everyone's glad to see a vendor selling ice cream here. I saw this stall on the way from the airport to the capital. This is a very common type of street refreshment. Lemonade made of 7-Up. The vendor opens a bottle for you and mixes the drink with ice for you. They also accept empty bottles, so people can bring used empty bottles and get a new drink. Well, I'm going to enjoy this lovely local refreshment. It's something you can only get in Iraq. I have no idea what it's called. It's a drink made up of 7-Up and ginger. I used to think ginger is something you add to your drink if you've got flu or some similar kind of shit. And my local experience wouldn't be complete without some very memorable odors, of course. See this? They've got a garbage truck here loading up some garbage, and the liquid waste is running down like a river. I could drown in it if I get any closer, honestly. Whenever I try something local in places like this, it's never just a drink, but a whole experience that includes the scene, the smell, the context, so to say. So, okay, let's try this. It's really very good. And extremely sweet, beyond imagination sweet. Damn, I feel like I'm gonna cry sugar. And even sweat sugar now, that's how sweet it is. It's hard to compare to anything I know. It's like 7-Up with total sugar overload, that's what it tastes like. There are almost no tourists in Kirkuk. The local scene is very different from what you can see in Baghdad. Any street can be blocked. It's enough to throw some car parts, a few rocks and a bunch of sticks on the ground, and there will be an armored vehicle with a machine gun on the roof in the distance guarding the passage. Here's another one, closer. You can see the machine gun clearly. Many buildings here look like the war never ended.
So, can we say that now it's gone?
No, of course we can't. We are now in Kirkuk, and the Islamic State is also here. The Islamic State is restoring its activities in the Syrian desert and other areas. There are sleeper cells that are trying to take every opportunity to turn local people against the people's militia, spreading rumors that we kill innocent civilians. The Islamic State is revisiting its promotion strategies. Our battle against it is far from over. We're going to stay here to stand the ground.
He vomited 3 times. I don't know, it's just restaurant. But what's the reason? Like, no one knows why.
They vomited from the air?
No, like someone come with, like, what's called? Put it inside, like, twice. And my brother, youngest brother, he'd be injured in this situation.
Oh, really?
He lost, like, his ear.
I interviewed Mohammed in June 2021. He was born in Kirkuk and lived to see several wars in Iraq. He's been working as a fixer for reporters. He volunteered to help the wounded, delivered aid, and evacuated people from areas under attack. Mohammed told me he thought he was totally used to explosions.
Like one day, we was like sitting in this house peacefully, and I just saw everything coming inside. Even the front door, you saw it. It wasn't inside like the house. And I just pushed my mom, and my father was on the street. Like this hood, it was totally destroyed. And we don't know what's the reason for that. Like, just because we live here? Like, till now there is no answer like for this question. Like, we always say why they attack us.
He worked hard for many years to promote Iraq internationally.
And I want to change the opinion that Iraq is not open. Like, after about the new rule, Iraq have become open country, but if you have a good people like to show you, there is a lot of good friends that they can be with you. And I start something as a first person in Iraq, invite someone, like it was before this rule. Like, I invite someone in my responsibility, and it was very tough. I traveled to Baghdad 4 times just to get one stamp. To approve, like, and even it was not allowed to send it from Kirkuk. Like, I should go every time by myself to the Ministry of Internal to be like sign a lot of documents that I will be responsible about this person for 1 month when he enter and leave.
He wants for people all over the world to discover Iraq as so much more than a war zone, although that has proven to be very hard for his entire family. Back in his days, his father couldn't come to terms with the doings of Saddam Hussein, who is the most important political figure you need to know about to understand Iraq's history. There was a time when Iraq wasn't really free to manage its own oil resources. More powerful nations such as the UK, France, and the USA were controlling the business. In the 20th century, the local population's resentment for the foreign self-serving dealers started growing, and soon Iraq's political scene saw the rise of a young, charismatic leader, 20-year-old Saddam Hussein. He was calling for toppling the rule of the government-backed British monarchy and took part in 2 coups and became deputy prime minister of the country in 1968. He took a course for cooperation with the Soviet Union and eventually nationalized the country's oil business that was selling oil to the West. This made him hugely popular with the population. People got access to better education, healthcare, and in the 1970s, Iraq became a flourishing oil empire, comparable to the United Arab Emirates, one of the richest countries of the Arab world. Oil accounted for 95% of Iraq's foreign trade earnings. Once Saddam Hussein got the taste of power, he turned into a dictator fairly quickly. 23 years into his rule, the entire country was decorated with his portraits. Every construction site had to have every 10th brick signed with his name. Just like North Korea, Baghdad opened a museum of gifts to their beloved leader. Saddam won both presidential referendums in Iraq that had no other candidates except him. During the first referendum, he got 99.96% of votes, and the second time, he scored all 100%.
And my father escaped from Iraq because at Saddam Hussein time, they wanted to kill him because they saw like he's against the government at that time. And I grew up without my father. I was working to support because my mom was taking $3 per month. That family was living, she was taking salary $3 per month, and we was working, me and my brother, to support the family. And I didn't see my father 11 years. When he come back, he was told, as all these political leaders, like you can see them in Iraq, they was living fancy life. My father was sleeping in the shops, and when they tell him like you are against Saddam Hussein, and they wanted to come one night to catch him and kill him, he go to Jordan first. He lived in Jordan 7 years and 4 years more in Syria. He was living in shops, in mosque, and other like who say we are anti-government leaders, they was living fancy life. They have salary. When they come to Iraq, they was having positions. When my father came back 2003, everyone give him his bag. So he became disappointed. Like he lost a lot of time without his family, and when he come back with all these documents that they make against him, he couldn't get anything till this moment. We grew up without our father.
The same armed guards who helped me get into Kirkuk were accompanying me to the market, even though Kirkuk had been free of terrorists for 2 years at the time, or so it seemed, because the threat was still very real and you could feel it in the air, even in the city centre. We're going to take a walk through the central market. The security guys told me to stay really close to them because this is a place for the locals that foreigners never go to. And many locals don't know the difference between different kinds of foreigners. Many can simply see any foreigner as having something to do with the pain and suffering that is brought to their land by foreign troops. And that pain and suffering is very real, as sad as it is. You simply can't come to Kirkuk if you are a foreigner unless you have someone to host you. The military patrol and police will only let you in if some local comes to claim you as their responsibility. Once we enter the city, I look around and see so many different things. Here you can see fire, the ruins, and NATO trucks like we're in a war zone. Then there are the guys simply chilling, smoking a shisha like nothing's ever been wrong. By the way, check out how ingenious this is. This guy has made a cooling device out of a piece of plastic bottle filled with ice for an even better experience. See this thing? Made out of iron bars? Do you know what this is? It's an anti-tank obstacle called a checked hedgehog. They're usually installed to prevent enemy heavy machinery from entering, because a vehicle attempting to drive over it will likely become stuck and very possibly damaged. Here, in Kirkuk, they use checked hedgehogs to mark no parking spaces. This one here means that you can't park here by an entrance gate.
If you hear it already happened, but sometimes you can see it, but you hear nothing yet. So you can see the explosion happen, and in a second or two, you hear the sound, because the sound travels like slower than light. And after that, after the sound, with 2 seconds and maybe a second, depends on the distance, the fragments start falling. If you're like in a 1 kilometer radius, depends on how big is the explosion, but the fragments started falling on your head. So you have to take cover even if you saw the explosion happening.
Did you see any explosion with your own eyes?
Yeah, many times, a few times.
Many?
Yeah.
Really?
I saw IEDs. I saw controlled detonations. I saw suicide cars exploding. I saw.
Here, on the one hand, you'll see police cars, checkpoint towers with machine guns, and on the other hand, places like the market with stuff like this perfume store for men with a very charming owner who will literally give you a fragrant shower with the help of a syringe. So you'll be good to go on a date or to a formal dinner, no less. I also got to see what cafes look like in Iraq. Very unusual, nothing like the kind I'm used to. I mean, my expectation is of a place with tables and seats, but here it's different. It's a fairly large room with benches along the walls, and they give you a stool that serves as an individual tiny table, and they give you an ashtray. You can have a water pipe brought to you right next to this improvised table, and it works really well. They call it shisha here, and of course they give you the local speciality, tea in small glasses, typical for Iraq and Arab countries in general, and that's how people chill here. Sitting in one big room at individual tiny tables. I say it's fun. We don't have anything like this at home. I've never seen a market so full of colorful and unexpected things. You can get a really nice wedding outfit here. And the next door, look what they have. A whole store full of guns. I've never seen so many guns in one place, and it's completely legal. They have a license. Here, for example, you can get a handgun of your choice. And here is that charismatic gun seller I already mentioned.
I liked guns ever since I was a child. I was fascinated by them. I spent a lot of time learning my way with guns. For example, this gun, I would assemble and disassemble it over and over. By the time I was 17, I was making gun plans. Then I wanted to become an official gun seller.
What kind of gun is this one?
This is a Russian Kalashnikov. A very powerful weapon, and the rounds are fairly cheap. This one's $500.
It's $500.
$500? Is this one secondhand?
Yes, new ones are $1,500 each.
And outside, someone was wheeling by a cart full of ripe apricots. The smell was absolutely divine. A few stores down, I discovered something so unimaginably cute. It's total cuteness overload. People say Iraq, right? But they have no idea Iraq has this amazing thing they've invented. I haven't seen anything like this anywhere else in the world. Check this out. They are selling chicken, and then they dye them all sorts of colors. For example, this little guy here is red, and another one over there is orange. Wait, where do you think they're going? Wow, this orange guy is so fast. Ah! I haven't seen anything like this anywhere in the world. It is so cute. It breaks the cuteness meter. Look at this little green guy. I'd really love to buy some. They're so sweet and tiny. Just look at this yellow one. Oh, I love the yellow one. He's totally adorbs. Don't you just love them all? Look at him. That's Kirkuk for you. Full of surprises. They also have another interesting invention, a kiosk with no walls, made with the help of a piece of canvas. Check this out. The heat here is unbearable. And so these guys invented an amazingly simple way to deal with it. They don't build stalls with walls or separate stores, they just set up shop on the ground and put up a piece of canvas or a sheet in front of it with little windows cut out for the buyers to be able to stick their head through and buy things. You know, like a real window in a real kiosk. You just look in through and buy whatever it is you're after. Bananas, tomatoes, I say it's genius. This keeps the seller and the goods in the shade, and it's easy to use for the customers. I'm so impressed. The very idea of a checkpoint is supposed to actually make you feel safer. It's manned with armed guys who are, in principle, in control of the situation on the ground. But here, you can't help but know that if those crazy terrorists hiding somewhere in the neighborhood were to decide to strike, they would most likely want to strike where it hurts the most. You know? They would very likely strike a checkpoint rather than a village in a field. So when you're here, you can't help but have this very unsettling feeling. Because while you understand that, here, you are safe.
The explosion were too much in my city. It led to a point that we were so careful. Even sitting home, we wouldn't sit near windows. We were to go to a cafe, we wouldn't sit near windows.
Your apartment.
So usually when the explosion happened, the window like flies away and hits you with fragments. So everyone was so careful because a lot of people got injured with that. Until today, we still have that panic. If we went to a very, very crowded place, you expect that something will happen. Because it's usually in a lot of crowded places in those years, explosion happened and a lot of people died for no reason. So people learned how to take care of themselves, not to go to crowded places, not to sit near windows, or either people learned homemade materials to fix it. So they would tape the window with tape, so when the explosion happened and the window breaks, it doesn't fall on you.
Yet, you also know that if something crazy were to happen, it may as well happen here, and there is nothing you can do about it. A typical site, you make a stop to buy some snack, to go to a kiosk, and here's what you see. A completely destroyed building, reduced to rubble literally. I'll come closer so you can take a better look. It looks like it took a direct hit during an airstrike, no less. Look, there's barely anything left of it. You can see the bare rebar frame. It looks like it was crumpled and torn to pieces by some giant's hand. This is an absolutely horrifying sight. Just look at it. The entire building simply collapsed into a shapeless heap of rubble. We're now driving through a town called Tuskamato, and I've been told we need to go through it as fast as we can. The reason is that there is a high risk of being attacked here. Even though the Islamic State hasn't entered it yet, they are stationed some 5 kilometers away from here. The city has not been bombed or attacked otherwise, but even so, it looks like it's been, well, not bombed, but at the very least unfinished in terms of construction. And the source of tensions comes not only from the bad guys in black with the big guns, but from the local conflict of religious nature mostly.
Very well, and he says this area was controlled by IS, but if they were airstrike. You can't stop because it's not allowed to stop in those areas, but you can see what you see this tower? It was airstrike.
There are some operations
There are daily search operations by counter-terrorism unit, Hajj al-Shabi and other brigades in the area which they control. In some areas there are still hideouts deep in the mountains.
To be honest, when you look closer into local people's eyes, you see something that gives you goosebumps. You know what I saw in their eyes? It's the knowing that they've survived a war, and at the same time they know the war isn't over yet. Men's eyes have this sadness, a lack of fire in them that comes from knowing too much pain and not knowing life without pain. As for women's eyes, I'll be honest, nowhere else I've seen so much looking into women's eyes as in Iraq. Because usually their faces and often their eyes are covered by a veil, and so if you get a chance to see a woman's eyes, you get to see how much deep and personal stuff can be packed in just one look. I won't ever forget Kasa's eyes. I met her in Al-Fallujah as we were listening to a story of one of the mothers. Tears were welling up in Kasa's eyes. You probably remember a lot about the war. What story sticks out the most in your memory?
All stories are pretty much the same here. Every day I work with dozens of women who get to relive their stories, and that's certainly affecting me too.
Kasa provides psychological support to women who lost their family in the war and now have no one to help them.
I tried to find my husband. I published his photo in the newspapers. All our men disappeared, and we never heard back from them. I think they were killed in the war. That's what I feel.
As the war raged, terrorists often forced civilians to fight for them and spared no one.
I talked to women who were ready to sell their children to make some money to survive on. Many women committed suicide. Many others have serious mental health problems. They lost their grip on reality, on what's going on, because they had lost too much and no longer wanted to live in the reality where they had lost everything. The same is true about children. Their lives are just as hard.
If we speak about those who managed to go through it, like for foreigners...
You know, as foreigners, we follow the situation in Iraq from the outside and think that a woman can't survive alone in a Muslim country. Is that true?
After the most horrible tragedy we got to experience in Iraq, women are now finding their place in the community. I am their leader because thanks to my experience, I can do more for the community. I can live alone, I can work, I am a member of parliament. After all that women in Iraq had to go through, they are now taking the place in the society.
Do you have a dream?
My dream is to open a center for children who lost their parents and for women who lost their husbands. Because some women now are forced to do illegal things to survive.
You mean prostitution? In response, Kasa only smiled and wiped a tear. You're doing such important good work. Thank you very much for this. You inspire many other women.
Yes, that's the reason why I opened a center here in Al Fallujah. Because so many women took their lives, and I wanted to set an example for all of them.
My impression of Iraq is a bittersweet mix of admiration and a sense of horrible injustice. When you see its cities and the ancient and great culture of this country, and when you see the debris and the bullet marks on the walls and can't believe that all of this could have been ruined in just a few years, and you see the same in the eyes of the people. None of them are happy and carefree anymore. Everyone seems to be aware that at any moment something bad can happen all over again. And people have this readiness inside them to face it, and it makes you shrink inside and always be on the lookout for trouble.